Yo, Bachi 2007 back at you with another one. Recently, DeRozan has invited Malika Andrews onto his podcast. Yes, our favorite ESPN broadcaster, our favorite feminist, anti-black male, not podcaster, broadcaster more to her profession, who often takes opportunity or takes every opportunity she can to denigrate black men and to make sure that any accusations of any criminal or negative activity, just mere accusations from years and decades ago, things that aren't true. And as we'll see in a clip coming up from the flight mic, uh, she'll leave out positive attributes about what a black person, the athlete might have been involved with that led to his demise, just so she can paint anybody in a negative light that when she gets the opportunity. And so DeMar, for some reason, decided to have her on his podcast. As we have seen with athletes lately, especially with basketball players, a lot of podcasting has become very popular. Draymond has one. Paul George has one, and many others. Now, I want to go ahead and play a piece of sound up front that is outside of what most of people who are discussing this issue, especially from the black men's space, have been playing. They've been playing the part where she talks about all of the backlash for the type of activity that I just described about her. But I want to play another part that happens in this interview first that can be instructive to understanding uh, how she gets to that place, but also makes it perplexing that she makes this acknowledgement, yet still does what she does, and then pretends like she doesn't understand why she gets the backlash from the black community, especially black men. Let's take a
I have so much empathy kind of for my parents. And like I said, my dad, it was really important to him to give me and my sister better. And he did in so many ways. And at the same time, like you can't protect your children from everything, right? So by putting me into a PWI, I had this wonderful education, but it didn't stop me from feeling othered, right? It didn't stop me from looking around and saying there are no teachers that look like me. There are very few students that look like me. Now I'm missing out on some of maybe the cultural experiences that my peers have, that our community has, that now I feel like I'm on the outside looking in, and so there's there's no perfect recipe.
And that's
It's funny that she says our community because Malika Andrews has never acted like she has any part in our community. And of course, she's half white. Her mom's white, her dad's black. And this is her husband here. This is Dave McKinnon, the guy. So, what community, this our community she's talking about, I'm not sure because she has never conducted herself as a member of the black community. We're going to let the flight mic give us a good rundown of some of these instances of what she's been up to these past years with some commentary interspersed. And then we're going to finally get to her comments to DeRozan about all of the backlash she's received and how disingenuous those comments were, as I feel, and some of the commenters on the video felt as well.
And there are times where she is so quick to report negative news about people that she gets the information wrong. For instance, when Adrian Payne, a former lottery pick by the Atlanta Hawks, passed away about 2.5 years ago, this is the way she addressed it.
Former Michigan State star Adrian Payne was shot and killed in Orlando, Florida, early Monday morning. He was waived by the Magic after he was named in a report by ESPN's Outside the Lines that he'd been involved in an alleged assault at Michigan State in 2010. No charges were filed in that case.
And you know what bothers me so much about the way she reported this? She didn't even take a moment to acknowledge why Adrian Payne passed away, because the reason he passed away was actually very heroic and very tragic. It doesn't take that much research either. ESPN posted an article about it. Former Michigan State basketball star Adrian Payne fatally shot while trying to prevent a domestic dispute, police investigation reveals.
So he was actually protecting a woman and got himself killed, which is why we don't advise getting involved in domestic situations, trying to play the tough guy. Uh, you get dealt with, and this is then what women do. A lot of them, so we can see with Malika Andrews again. This man is killed trying to help someone, trying to protect a woman, and her whole way of honoring this man in his death is to try to denigrate him by bringing up some charges from years earlier. Again, she always brings up the criminalization of black men and does what W.D. Griffith did with The Birth of a Nation, that uh, racist propaganda video that basically reignited the Ku Klux Klan, and segregation. Really powered was a propaganda piece that powered segregation by basically saying that all black men are ravenous wolves. They're basically out here to beat and rape white women, and so they have to be controlled. So, and to do that, you denigrate the character of a man to make it okay to then brutalize him. And this is what Malika Andrews does over and over again and again. Here's an example: this man has passed away trying to protect a woman from domestic violence, and this is what she does in respect to that.
Levied against Payne in 2018, and this isn't the only incident of her doing this. When Joe Mazzulla was hired by the Boston Celtics, a realization of a lifetime dream for him, this is how she broke the news.
Be remiss not to also mention that Mazzulla was arrested twice at West Virginia, once in 2008 for underage drinking and aggravated assault. He pled guilty, paid a fine, and then again in 2009 for domestic battery after an incident at Morgantown Bar. The domestic battery case never went to trial. It was settled in August of 2009. He paid a $100 fine and court costs, plus had to do 40 hours of community service. Now,
So he's getting hired for the biggest day of his life. His brother's getting his big opportunity. And her response is bring up charges from 12, 13 years ago when he was in college. And he was a young man. Charges that basically went nowhere. Misdemeanor, paid a fine. Nothing really came out of it. There's nothing there. This guy is a known guy of high character, Christian brother. And she wants to bring up stuff from his past when he was 20, on the day that he's making it huge and having the biggest day of his life. Again, what does she do? She makes sure to criminalize and dehumanize a black man every chance she gets.
Of course, the very cherry on top was the way she handled Brandon Miller getting selected number 2 overall in the 2023 NBA draft. Bear in mind, this is a fulfillment of a lifelong dream for Brandon Miller after a very difficult year. So what is she saying to a national audience as this is all going down? Well,
Miller, his name did surface in court testimony involving a case where his former teammate and another man, they've been indicted for capital murder in the fatal shooting of 23-year-old Jamia Harris in January. The University of Alabama has described Miller as a cooperating witness. How is this factoring, if at all, into how teams are evaluating him?
yeah,
There was no factor. He wasn't charged. He wasn't a suspect in the case. Like, the guy's face, this is him live during when it was happening, and Fight Mike was reacting. This is just insane. Again, goes out of her way on this young brother's biggest day of his life. His introduction to a national audience for the people who don't even really follow college basketball very closely, and the way she comes in to rain on his parade by again criminalizing another brother to for her desire to dehumanize black men, and then talks about how she's a part of our community, but she's an outsider, and wonders why she's an outsider. She operates as an outsider. She is the ops, so she can talk about being how she doesn't fit in with our community, but she was the one who puts herself on the outside to play the opposition to our community and denigrate our brothers. Now, Flight Mike did talk about that infamous time when Giannis got up and walked out on Malika when she was asking him a question at a press conference because of an article she had written the day before that was false insinuations and making stuff up. So when she came in, asked him a pretty innocuous question the next day, he was just like, "I'm not even talking to her. I'm not even acknowledging her." The huge thing he left out is when the brother was getting fired from the or initially suspending him, Ime Udoka, over what was going on with him and another female employee of the Celtics having a consensual relationship with him, going up against both the rules of fraternization within the organization. Uh, the way she tried to quell any discussion about the counterparty, the female's accountability of the situation, The way she disrespected Stephen A around that, the way she really tried to just make this guy out like he was a predator for having a consensual adult relationship with a colleague, was just, again, just beyond, certainly external to our community. Certainly she is the ops. So she is an outsider because she makes herself an outsider through her behavior. So, with all that, let's take a look at what she had to say about all of this backlash uh, in the interview with DeMar DeRozan. Also, I want to show one more thing that kind of makes the last year when Josh Getty was being credibly called out for possibly dating an underage girl. Malika didn't want to report that issue. She didn't report it at first, and then when she reluctantly reported it, she looked like she was eating sour grapes to have to even mention anything negative about the white guy when she goes out of her way to make negative reports about black men during their death, during their moment in the limelight, where they're finally making it to the NBA, making it as head coaches, things that have nothing to do with the situation. She's so gleeful to get that out every time it's a black man. When it's a white man, she didn't even want to report the issue. And I did this video on that issue that you can see here. So now let's listen to her give her excuse making speech about all of these things that she's gotten backlash for. And let's juxtaposition what she's saying and claiming here to what we've just watched that she's actually done.
I try to keep that in mind when I'm talking about players, right? I try to have that empathy
For sure.
and understand that I have a job to do, but also understand like I'm not here to play gotcha.
For sure.
I say to, you've heard me say this before, I always say I'm going to be two things. I want to be accurate and I want to be fair.
For sure, yeah.
And if I'm not one of those two things, you might not always like me, but this is my number. Please call me. And people have called and they've said that. And I say that oftentimes to before, especially before I'm talking to folks about something that is sensitive or tough because these things come up. And it is hurtful. Like and I think that's okay to say sometimes. It hurts. Even it doesn't matter if it is someone who is credible or someone with a big platform or if it's someone in their mom's basement just firing off a post. Sometimes it is hurtful when that seeps through, particularly for me when it's not true.
Right.
And that's been the hardest part for me sometimes is stomaching the falsehoods, particularly, you know, this you hate black men or think that couldn't be farther from the truth. And you
Could it not be very close to the truth? Let's listen to the things she said. She tries to have empathy with players. Let's go back through those clips we just watched. Did you see any empathy or did you see the exact opposite? The attempt to dehumanize these young black men as they were either being murdered, have been murdered, or um, were having the biggest day of their life that she tried to rain on with the denigration. She says accurate and fair, as was demonstrated. She's inaccurate often on certain occasions, and I would submit that there's nothing fair about her bringing up years and decades old charges that have nothing to do with the situation at hand. And in some situations where the person was either not proven guilty or outright wasn't a suspect and just was associated with the incident, but is not even a suspect, was not charged, was not convicted of anything, most especially. And she's bringing these things up. There's nothing fair about that. Uh, and look how she tried to say that people who are firing off posts are in their mother's basement. So there goes another little denigrating dig. No, most people aren't in their. Most people who have criticisms for her are not in their mother's basement. Again, she tried to delegitimize the criticism. So again, she still has no accountability per typical of these women. And this is what we're getting from her. This is her pretend mea culpa. And we're supposed to feel sorry for her because she's talking with a soft tone now, and she's a female. She's gonna act like she's about to cry. And DeMar DeRozan, I mean, he really disappointed me here. He had no pushback. He actually tried to blame things on her being a female. I didn't play the lead up into this because I didn't want it to be so long. He was basically setting it up for her. Oh, it's so hard for you as a woman, as if that is some excuse or some reason for her behavior. It's not because she's a woman. It's because of her behavior. And this was really disappointing uh, for DeMar to carry the water for this foolishness, like he's sitting here doing. And DeMar's audience agrees with me. I just scrolled down in this same video. She's a liar. This woman is the reason why NBA is losing viewing. I was telling my dad earlier, I don't even watch uh that particular show that she hosts, NBA Live, whatever, the one with Perkins on it, and all. I don't watch it just because she's on there. So anything that she has to do with, I don't want to see it. I'm changing the channel too. I stopped after she came on ESPN. ESPN hires feminists. Um, there were some other ones where they were chiding DeMar specifically. Here goes one that's basically saying the same thing I'm saying about the pushback, the lack of, him coming from from a Crip set in Compton, California. The fact that you didn't grill her on bringing up people's past and how it affects them made me unsub. So this is what he's getting from his own audience. This guy agrees. Uh, you know, DeMar, you're low key a chump for this one, Brody. Should have finished that 360 dunk too. Okay. So if people say we're not falling for it, Malika, and I'm not falling for it, I don't buy these fake tears that she's trying to well up in her face and pretend like she's empathetic, or that she even attempts to be fair. See, she had an issue with her dad when she was an adolescent, and I think that is part of the root of all. Some big fallout there and during adolescence time, which we don't have time to go into here. And that, along with the fact that she's an arch feminist of the modern gender studies variety, where all men are the boogeymen, and of course, if you're coming from a white feminist background, of course, black men are the boogeymen of all boogeymen. I think all of this feeds into her psyche and her whole way in which she looks at, perceives, disrespects black men, and looks to see them in the most negative light. And these fake tears being covered by DeMar DeRozan is not going to work. Nobody's buying this, and she's still the same problem and takes no accountability because she's fair and accurate, according to her. Nonsense. We're out on this one. About you 2007. Get back to you on the next one. Peace.